Welcome, everyone, to the Pizza Buffet, powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook here on the Hammer Betting Network. We are live on the Forward Progress channel on YouTube and at Forward NFL on Twitter. Be sure to follow on Twitter and subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you do enjoy the content as well on YouTube, please just take some time right now, if you can, hit that thumbs up, that like button. It does go a long way for the YouTube algorithm so that we can continue, or I can continue, at least on Sunday mornings, doing this content for you. For those who are new here, this is the show where I run through today's NFL card, top to bottom, rotation number order. I will lock in any bets that I think are still worth making, and I will lock in all bets against Pinnacle's lines, as Pinnacle is the official sportsbook partner of the Pizza Buffet. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sportsbook, now available to Ontario residents. Find out what professional bettors have known for decades. Pinnacle's where the best bettors play, and you must be 19 plus in Ontario. Please play responsibly. Not available to U.S. customers. I do want to quickly get into like a little diatribe here before I get into the games today. Shorter slate, obviously, with 6 teams on their bye week. So I do want to get into this. Today is going to be a rough day for locking in selections. So the whole purpose of this show is not to tell you what I've bet on earlier in the week, where the line has already moved 2 points or whatever. That's not doing anybody any good in general. Frankly, this show might not be doing anybody any good in general because it's Sunday morning. It's 11 a.m. Pinnacle right now is taking 20K on NFL games. That number is going to go up very shortly as well. You typically do want to get your bets in earlier in the week rather than Sunday morning. But what I will say is, for the first time in a long time here, the numbers on the board have really converged towards where I make the games today. So full disclosure, we're not going to have a bunch of plays today, probably 2 or 3, just looking at the card right now. I'll go through every game like I normally do, discuss it, break it down, what I saw in the game, if I still see something in the game, but I would never, ever advise somebody go and place a bet now if I wasn't willing to place that bet myself. So just want to make that explicitly clear for this morning. It's a tougher board. We saw 2 big line moves, or at least one huge one, tons of money. We're seeing a few other things happen with the Dolphins Chargers total right now, a little bit of money with the Titans as well. So I'll get into all that and I will break it down. Really quickly, for those of you who are watching on Twitter, that's not a problem. But if you do comment, I'm not going to see your comments in real time. Hop on over to the YouTube channel. I will see your comments in real time. I do like to make them part of the show. Anyone who watches on a weekly basis knows that I bring you guys into the show and I discuss, I use the comments as a way to guide the show as well. So please hop over to YouTube. If you're on Twitter, you will see the YouTube link where you're watching the tweet right now. And you can just click over there if you do want to get it on the comments. All right. As always, I'll be using betstamp to lock in the plays. You can follow me on betstamp at Rob Pizzola. Every single play that I've ever given out on this show over the course of the last 3 years has been locked in on betstamp and verified. So not spoofing my record. It's in the negative. It is very challenging to win on Sunday mornings, and I firmly believe that. Okay, betstamp. You can check it out, betstamp.app.app for those of you who are on desktop. If you want to check it out on your mobile device, you still get the same functionality. Looks a bit different, but you can just download it on Android or iOS. So we shall start with the Cleveland Browns and Cincinnati Bengals. If this is your first exposure to any NFL thing today, you're probably wondering what the heck happened here, as the line is now 4. Some books in Ontario, 3.5, but mostly the entire market bet down to 4. This total's seen a ton of movement this week as well. It was once 49.5, bet all the way down to 46, and we took some money towards the over with the Cleveland move as well today. I've talked about Cleveland on a couple of media appearances I did this week, whether that was on the Mayo Media Network here on YouTube or You Bet or You Bet. I did like Cleveland. I did bet Cleveland. I also gave out my exact number in the game on those media appearances, which was Cincinnati -4. So as we stand right now, I would no longer advocate a bet. What people do need to know, and a lot of people are scratching their heads, what's happening here this morning? Was there news or whatever? Typically speaking, this is the bigger players in the game that are moving lines NFL Sunday morning. So it would take a substantial amount of money to move the entire screen. That's Pinnacle, BetCris and Circa, whatever, across the board. So you're seeing a ton of money come in on Cleveland. Someone who wins in the NFL long-term has bet the Browns this morning. That doesn't mean it's a guaranteed winner. There's been many times where that play might end up losing. However, there's a lot of influential money that came out on the Cleveland Browns this morning. I mentioned this. I've kind of been higher than market on Cincinnati up until this week. So for those who follow the Hammer HQ on Twitter or Instagram, I was putting out weekly power rankings. I would consistently put out power rankings on a weekly basis, and people would be like, how could you rank the Bengals this high? They haven't beaten anybody, this and that. And completely ignoring the fact that they were beating bad teams by margin for the most part. But then they beat Kansas City last week, and now it's completely changed. And now the Bengals are contenders in everyone's mind. They were always contenders in my mind. The problem is there was, in my opinion, a bit of an overreaction to the Bengals in market. And probably a lot of that stemmed from the fact that on the other side, the Browns offense looked abysmal last week in the first game with Deshaun Watson. With that said, I think that there's a very high likelihood that was probably the worst performance we'll see out of Deshaun Watson this year. Didn't look comfortable in the offense. They ran a very vanilla offense. I do expect that to get better going forwards. Deshaun Watson has faced the Bengals defensive coordinator just once in his career. That was back in 2020. So we don't have a large sample to work with here. But he had a very good game, 73% completion rate, 324 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And on the other side of things, Cincinnati, I mean, they've been really, really good for most of the year. The really only stinker that they've had in that spot is because of the Halloween night game, which was the Cleveland Browns. And if we're going back a few years now, the Bengals have consistently struggled with the Browns pass rush. I'm not sure that that's going to be the case today because the pass rush isn't the same as it was in previous years. But if we look at the pressure rate and the amount of sacks that Joe Burrow's taken in games against the Browns, specifically the way that Myles Garrett has torched this offensive line, I think that, we see why, I think, the market agrees with what I was saying in terms of maybe one of these teams is over or undervalued, if not a combination of both. Cleveland's relatively healthy. You can't replace the players on IR, but nobody expected to miss this game. Amari Cooper, questionable, but he is expected to go. Hayden Hurst out for Cincinnati, which wouldn't really move the spread at all, but does take away one of the offensive weapons. This is an interesting comment. Fezzik said sharps don't bet on Sunday. Why are sharps betting this morning? I think these are a combination of things. And there's someone responding in the comments that doesn't understand the sarcasm, I think. But yeah, I mean, listen, there's a level of sharp that's betting on Sunday morning because they are waiting for limits to go up to get down the amount of money that they want to get down, plain and simple. So yeah, I mean, there's very few people in the world that can consistently win at this time. I'm not saying it can't happen. There's definitely bettors out there that can make it happen. But don't fall into the trap of thinking you're one of those, unless you've been able to prove that over a large sample size. Okay. So nothing for Cincy and Cleveland. It'd be an interesting game though. I could see a lot of scenarios there. There are scenarios where Cleveland just stinks again offensively and they get blown out of the game because that's entirely a possibility. But I think that you're probably buying low on Cleveland following a pretty piss poor performance against Houston last week. So yeah, we move on. Jets and Bills, do a quick refresh. Okay, so market's settled in now here at 10 and the total 43.5, which has come down. It was on 44 earlier in the week. You just do see a few 9.5s on the board still at some of the more recreational books. But for the most part, the market has moved out to 10 in this game. Pinnacle minus 10 plus 102 would be the best 10 price on Buffalo in the entire market and better than some of the 9.5s as well. Very challenging game to handicap, in my opinion. And we have a few of these this week because we do have a quarterback in Mike White who's an incredibly small sample size guy. We saw him do something similar last year when he came in, looked pretty good, and then completely fell off. And he fell off in a game against Buffalo where he threw 4 interceptions and he looked pretty horrible in the process. So we do have a relatively healthy Jets team. We have the Bills with a couple of key questionables right now. Their left tackle, Deion Dawkins, strong side linebacker, Matt Milano. If anyone does see anything, I did quickly do a quick injury recap before I went on air today. And my producer will feed me some stuff in real time as well. But if you do see any breaking injuries, just drop them into the YouTube comments and I will discuss their value if I think that there's value there or not. Jets beat the Bills earlier this year. They barely blitzed Josh Allen in that game, 7% of the time. That was the lowest that any team has blitzed Josh Allen this year, but he took a bunch of sacks. So the Bills O-line was unable to hold up in that game. The loss of Dawkins at left tackle, I think, would be enough to swing my opinion from Bills to Jets in this game in particular. But I do think as time goes on, Mike White will fall off. And that's not to say that Mike White isn't an upgrade over Zach Wilson, which he definitely is, in my opinion. But if we look at the first 2 games, you have Bears, you have Vikings. Those are both bad defenses with issues in the secondary, especially at corner. You're not going to have that with the Bills today. On top of that, you look at the first 2 Mike White games this year, a lot of play action, a lot of screen passes. And if we actually strip out all the play action and screen passes from what the Jets have run in the first few weeks of Mike White, and we use just his true dropbacks, his EPA per dropback is 32nd out of 42 quarterbacks this year. Zach Wilson, for reference, would be 35th. So there is a scenario where a very good defensive coordinator in Leslie Frazier for the Buffalo Bills is able to really just take that out of the equation and force Mike White to beat them through the passing game on the true dropbacks. And I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case. My number in this game was just north of 10 for the Bills. I don't see value at the existing price right now. The total being bet down, I kind of disagree with as well, but you do have some weather conditions in Buffalo today. Nothing extreme, but enough where you might see somebody take an early stance on the under in that game particularly, but it's a pretty good shot of snow today. Maybe some snow rain mix. Winds are not too bad, 10, 15 miles an hour. Really, there's not a game on the board today that is going to be majorly impacted by weather. But this is one of them. Philly and the Giants would be another one where there are some conditions that will impact the game. Okay, so two games, two no plays. GS, good point. It's incorrect that there are small or no edges on Sunday morning. You often see significant moves on Sunday mornings with sharp betting groups betting 6 figures. I agree. However, it's substantially more difficult to win at that time. Just think about it logically. At this point, the sportsbook is the most confident in their number because they've processed as much information from bettors as possible. Makes it substantially more difficult for the average person to win betting the NFL at this time. Not saying it can't be done, but definitely saying it's more challenging. All right, game number 3. As we see the Bills actually taking a little bit of money at Pinnacle here right now to -10, -106. Texans and Cowboys. I won't spend a lot of time in this one. Again, it will look like an off-market number for Pinnacle. Pinnacle, if you use the sportsbook regularly, they do have a drop-down bar where you can just change the price on the game. It's pretty much in line with the 17s that are there. So the market is kind of settling in around this 17 -110 range. Total above 44 being a key number for totals as we sit at 44.5. I don't have any strong thoughts on this game. The Texans now 4 straight weeks of not covering. Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, both out for Houston. If anyone in the chat can name the top 3 receivers for the Houston Texans today, I will be extremely impressed if you're able to pull that out of your ass for the Texans today, because it's ugly. They go back to Davis Mills on offense. That's probably a slight upgrade over Kyle Allen. Probably, without the weapons there, going to be a real issue in terms of moving the ball today. It's Philip Dorsett, Chris Moore, Amari Rodgers, your top 3. Chris Moore was the only one someone came up with so far. Curly, Larry, and Mo, Manny, Mo, and Jack. Yeah. It's ugly for them. So you're now asking Houston to move the ball against one of the best defenses in the NFL with a top pressure rate. There's a scenario where I guess they just hand off to Dameon Pierce over and over again. I don't think that that's going to be effective. I think any defense is going to force the Texans to try to beat them in the passing game going forwards. And then on the other side of things, the Texans defense looks better on paper than it actually is. Strip out garbage time, the numbers get a lot worse. It's an incredibly one-sided matchup. The reality is I just don't like to bet these games because of all the late game variance, in my opinion, which is, okay, if Dallas has a lead by like 21 in the fourth quarter, what's happening? Are they still playing the game? Are they pulling starters? I think it's dependent from team to team. The Cowboys don't have a divisional game next week. They play the Jags, but every game is important. So you might see them take starters out of the game. They might not. I think you're really into guessing territory at this point. And if you think you're better off, like you can guess better than the rest of the market, then so be it. Go and do it. But for me, it's not something that I'm super stoked about in terms of backing either side in this game. I think the market has kind of settled into a price range where I don't really see an appealing bet one way or another. Vikings and Lions. Okay, so Pinnacle has a fantastic price on the money line in this game, in particular for the Detroit Lions. I'm going to go ahead and lock in the Lions for a standard 1 unit. So this is 124 to win 100 on the money line. This erases some of the late game bullshit that's been going on with the Vikings over the course of a few weeks, or just the ability to somehow pull a rabbit out of a hat, late in a game, something like that. But I do think that this is a very good money line price and worth playing at this point. It's kind of like I'm living, anyone who's been watching this over the course of the season, it feels like I'm, just living Groundhog Day, like Bill Murray over and over again. I get it. Minnesota just keeps covering. For me, I'm a very process-based person rather than a results-based person. So I make bets every single week. I'd highly encourage anyone else who's making bets on a weekly basis to do the same. But obviously your goal is to end up winning money in the long run, right? There are signs of someone who's going to win money in the long run. Closing line value, extremely important. Don't get caught up in small narratives or whatever like that of I beat the close on this game and lost once, whatever. Over time, you beat the close in the NFL, you're going to do just fine. So I like to track my closing line value. So every week I bet against the Vikings. Then I say, did I get a good price? Last week with the Jets, I did. The week prior with New England, I personally did as well. So I check off that box. Then I look at the box score metrics after the game is over and say, should I have covered this game? Was it a coin flip? Should I have not covered? Or so on and so forth. And I do this on a weekly basis. And with the Vikings, I feel like I'm consistently making the correct wagers and I'm coming out on the wrong end of the bets. And that's not an excuse, but the quicker you realize that the NFL and betting in general, whether it's the NFL, whatever sport, quicker you realize that there's just a ton of variance. And sometimes you're going to make great plays and it's not going to work in your favor. And sometimes vice versa, the better off you're going to be in the long run. And especially from a mental standpoint as well, when you lose painful games and so on and so forth. So I'm not ready to change my opinion on the Vikings because they have done nothing on the field that would warrant me changing my opinion on the Vikings. I still don't think that this is a great football team. I think that they're a slightly above average football team. They're without their left tackle again. Christian Darrisaw expected to miss another game for Minnesota. That's not confirmed yet, but it seems to be the most likely case. But not only is Minnesota doing this with smoke and mirrors now, and again, not saying the Vikings are terrible or whatever, but you look at the record, the average fan will look at the record and see 10 wins, and that's all that they're going to get fixated on. And I think if you take a step back and you look at their efficiency numbers, offensively, defensively, it would have a profile of closer to a 6-win team this year. So I think that's important. Now, on top of that, they get a Detroit team who, in my opinion, has been undervalued for a few weeks now. We're starting to see the market catch up to it. There's, people will scratch their heads and be like, oh my God, how are the 4-win Lions favored at home against the 10-win Vikings? Because forget about the records for a second, right? Like, just pretend the records don't exist and just put these teams side by side in terms of their statistical profiles, especially over the course of the last month, where the Lions are starting to get healthy again. And you wouldn't find much separating these two teams. In fact, I think you could make a very sound argument that the Lions are even better than the Vikings right now. And it's no coincidence that the Lions are getting healthy again offensively, and they're playing well again. If you look at Jared Goff with St. Brown on the field this year, he has a 0.20 EPA per dropback. That would rank 4th of the 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. Without St. Brown on the field this year, he ranks 30th. So that's a huge difference maker for them overall. Look at the first game against Minnesota when they played. Lions were moving the ball pretty efficiently in that game. DeAndre Swift gets hurt. St. Brown gets hurt. Jamal Williams gets stuffed on a 4th and 1. The Lions didn't convert another 4th and 1 on their own side of the field. They missed 2 field goals in the game. Like, everything that could possibly go wrong goes wrong for them. They lose the game to Minnesota. But where I think that the Vikings defense particularly struggles is in the red zone. That's been the case for the majority of this season. The Lions first in red zone touchdown rate this year. If they do move it into the red zone, they've been pretty effective at scoring. So I'm on the Lions again today. I think the price is short. I think that Pinnacle price is really good. Hope Mini doesn't get you again. I hope the same as well. Darrisaw's backup is not bad. This is true. However, Darrisaw is very good. So there's still a downgrade there. I would agree that maybe that's a little bit overstated, and not dropping off to a complete sieve in that game. You could play Detroit team total over. I don't hate that either. Hey, Rob, is there anyone you'd look to be targeting in DFS today? So I'll answer this one really quickly, but when regulation happened in Ontario on April 1st, DFS went away in Ontario. So because of that, I don't play any more paid contests in DFS. However, with that said, I did get to test run a product called Thrive Fantasy that we're working with the Hammer Betting Network right now. You can check it out, thrivefantasy.com. If you use promo code HAMMER, HAMMER, you'll get a 100% deposit match up to $250, which is better than the offer that they have widely available, which is a 100% deposit match up to $100. So Hammer, promo code for Thrive Fantasy. That's all I can really say about DFS. I don't look at it more often, but it's actually a pretty fun product because it's very props based. You don't have to spend a ton of time researching like you typically would have with DraftKings or FanDuel in the past or whatever. So check that out. I highly advocate for it. Like I said, I got to test run it for a while, and I really enjoy the product overall and how quick it is and seamless it is to use. What would the spread have to be for you to back Mini? Probably 3.5. But even at that point, yeah, I would probably bet 3.5 Minnesota in this game. I think the spread should be 3 in this game. 2.8 is what I make it. Is an exact number. Round up to 3. All right, we move on. That one of plays that will be in today, and we'll see where the rest of this day takes us. Jags and Titans. Okay. Jags take money this morning, maybe overnight. News that Trevor Lawrence is going to play. then there's a little bit of buyback on Tennessee when all those flat threes hit the market. We're also seeing a little bit of buyback, by the way, on the Bengals right now. Just a titch. However, I completely understand why someone would have wanted to bet Jacksonville in this situation. I think the Jags have been an incredibly unlucky team this year. Once you get the status of Trevor Lawrence out of the way, that's another improvement for them, or something that's like a positive impact in market. But most importantly, I think for this game, the Tennessee injuries are bad. They lose Treylon Burks last week that was like a nasty hit. Concussion, out this week. Denico Autry is out again for them on the defensive line. But the cornerback situation is a pretty big concern. Christian Fulton is out. Trey Avery is out. Remember that Caleb Farley, Elijah Molden are on IR for them. So they're really without 4 corners today. And it could be challenging for them. I know Trevor Lawrence didn't play great last week against the Lions, but even with that number, since week 9, Trevor Lawrence is 4th in EPA per dropback. He's 2nd in completion percentage. He's thrown 7 touchdowns and no interceptions. So it's tough for me to get behind Tennessee, even at 3 here. I mean, my number is very, very close to this. I'm in like the 3.25 range, so I'm definitely not chasing the number on Jacksonville or anything at this point. However, I do think that those Tennessee injuries are, I don't want to say if they're undervalued, because obviously someone is taking a stance on Jacksonville in this game, but I do think that they play a big role in this matchup, specifically against the Jaguars, with Christian Kirk, Marvin Jones. We don't know if Zay Jones is playing, but it looks like he's trending towards playing. So no strong opinion here. And this is a good point by Hugh. Jacksonville can't stop the pass, but the Titans can't pass. The loss of Treylon Burks hurts them. And Derrick Henry's kind of fallen off as well, right? If we look at recent weeks, he's not generating as much yards after contact. His success rate, from week 10 onwards, we're now in week 14 now, so we're talking about 4 weeks of play. He has a 26.7% success rate running the ball. Does Derrick Henry? The Jags' rush defense isn't terrible. So no strong opinion here. Would you play Jacksonville +4? Absolutely. 100%. If that number was still available in market and all the information that you know now, which is Lawrence is good to go, then you do it. Jared brings up a good point. Tennessee has been beat up on defense all year. This is true. They suffered a lot of injuries in the linebacking core earlier this year. Cunningham was out. Dupree was out. Jeffrey Simmons was out for a few games on the defensive line as well. So they've been dealing with this and getting away with it. But now you're asking them to win by not necessarily margin anymore with the number at 3, but you're asking them to win by 4+ to cover. Don't trust their offense enough to do that. And I don't know that the defense performs at the same level that we're accustomed to based off of the injuries that they have now. In general, do you think it can be profitable to fade a huge move like we saw in the Cincinnati game and bet them at -3.5? I did some studies on this several years ago, which are now no longer relevant. But the answer is, I think you're just coin flipping at that point. Typically speaking, I'd be more inclined to play back against that huge Sunday move than I would to keep chasing it. But I don't think that either is a sound strategy, personally. Thrive, the same idea as Prize Picks. Similar, I would say. Thrive, you get 20 players to choose from, and it's all props driven, and you have to pick 10 of the 20, and there are odds associated with the over or the under on every single one of those props, which kind of boosts your score as well, which is fun. When you go money line with high variance plays, even if your number doesn't support the money line, I think that, yes, there are situations where you might do that, where you might say that this game in particular has more variance than usual. One example would have been the Browns, right? Like typically, if I was playing the Browns earlier in the week, I would bet the +6, but I don't necessarily, I would probably take more on that money line than I would a +6 with another game, because I think the range of what Deshaun Watson can be is so high, right? I think eventually like the spread converges to a certain number. With that said, you get a Deshaun Watson elite performance, and I think that money line is a lot more live than in some other games. Like, if you were taking, I don't know, who else is +6 today? Is there anyone +6 on the board? Not a good week to throw out another example like that. But yes, I agree with doing that. Dion Dawkins and Matt Milano are active. Now we wait and see if we see any Buffalo money in market. I don't know that we will, but okay. We move on. Let's keep going. In a slow pace today. I don't know how many games I've done so far, but we got to get moving. Eagles and Giants. Thanks for everyone tuning in here, by the way, as well. And again, if you haven't or you're late to join, please just right now on YouTube, click that thumbs up button. Goes a long way for the YouTube algorithm. It's much appreciated. If you do enjoy the content, it does help out a lot. Eagles, Giants. Market either shaded towards the Giants at 7.5 or to the Eagles at 7. So you're like in that 7.25 range, total of 44.5. So again, talking about how this week the numbers have sort of converged in market to what my numbers were in the game. That's usually a good sign. I'm kind of happy about with the way things have gone this week. It sucks for the viewers. Don't want to give out bets that I wouldn't make, but I think this is a bad matchup for the Giants in particular. The only thing that's keeping me, would keep me off of laying this number right now is that it's already moved a little bit. And on top of that, there's some familiarity within the division that might lend itself to a lower scoring game. But with that said, I mentioned the Giants offense. Weeks 1 to 7, they were solid. 7th in EPA per drive, 10th in points per drive. It was working. Since then, 23rd in EPA per drive, 24th in points per drive. Why has that happened? A few reasons. One, there were injuries. They had a lot of offensive line injuries. They have injuries to skill position players at receiver. We don't know, as far as I can tell, if Saquon Barkley is playing today, which honestly, in a lot of situations would not matter because it's just a running back. But when you're missing a bunch of dynamic weapons already for the Giants offense, it probably does have some sort of impact on the game altogether. But most importantly, Daniel Jones has been way less efficient off of play action in recent weeks. The play action game isn't working anymore overall for the Giants. Now you add in the fact that they're facing key defensive injuries on top of that. Another week without Adoree Jackson at cornerback for them, but they lose Leonard Williams on the defensive line as well, as Justin points out in the chat here. And that is a big blow. And then I talk about the matchup in particular. Thank you guys for the Saquon Barkley update. So he is active. Appreciate everyone who posted in that in the chat to let me know. But you take into account the fact that particularly where the Giants D has struggled this year has been on early downs. They're one of the worst early down defenses in the entire league. They've been able to get off the field on third down. The challenge is the Eagles are one of the best. I believe they're number 1 overall in early down success rate. So you get a team that does really well to keep themselves out of those third and long situations, and does pick up that, first downs pretty regularly, doesn't get the third down a whole lot. I'm not chasing the number here, like I said, but I do think that there are lots of scenarios where Philadelphia blows them out of this game. I would be looking for potentially a small long shot play on a Philadelphia alternate line, something like a 21 minus 20.5 along those lines today. And I will bet that myself right after we go off air. But aside from that, with this spread as it is right now, I do not like the game whatsoever. Total at 44.5. This one's interesting because the Giants have had these mid-40s totals for a long time now. They just keep playing them under regularly. I wonder if that changes, though, if they get into a game state where they're just trailing, which is, I think, the most likely scenario here based off the spread. Like last week, they went up 10-0 early. Offense gets a little bit more conservative. The game somehow doesn't even go over, even though going to overtime, because they end up in the tie. But if they do get trailing early, I think they might have to open it up. That lends itself to more turnovers for Daniel Jones and possibly some more big plays as well. So If it got down to 44, which it won't, I don't think at this point, I would strongly consider the over in this game. Okay. Nothing else in the chat to go over right now is good. Steelers and Rays. This is the one this week where I'm probably like on the opposite side of the, I don't want to say the opposite side of the line move. I haven't bet Pittsburgh, but it was, I'll get to that comment in a second, but I kind of am interested in them. Can't speak a bit right now. Okay, I get the Baltimore love. I do. Well-coached team, very good in an underdog role. A lot of people think that the drop-off from Lamar Jackson to Tyler Huntley isn't that much. I guess this is where you're going to have a disagreement in market. I think it's larger than what the market thinks it is. Tyler Huntley played a lot of close games for the Ravens last year, like a lot of them. The problem is that the Ravens just do not have the skill position players this year, and they become heavily reliant on Lamar to do stuff with his legs. But you have a receiving core of Devin Duvernay, Demarcus Robinson, and Deshaun Jackson, who's like a senior citizen at this point. And I'm sorry, that's not going to get it done. So the offensive production has suffered this year with Rashad Bateman out of the lineup. It will continue to suffer. But particularly if we go back to the start of last year and we look at the numbers with Lamar Jackson in this offense versus Tyler Huntley. With Lamar Jackson, 44% success rate. With Tyler Huntley, 41.5%. So we have a decrease in success rate. Third downs, the Ravens with Lamar, 41%. With Huntley, 32%. Yards per attempt with Lamar, 7.2. With Huntley, 5.7. There is a substantial drop-off here. I think it's very close to a touchdown, personally. You do get some good news for the Ravens in that Ronnie Stanley will be back at left tackle. You also have TJ Watt dealing with who knows what. He just doesn't look himself out there right now. I don't want to say who knows what. We know exactly what it is, but don't know what level he will play at in specific for today's game. I think the market is overmoved on this game towards Baltimore personally. If you look at the money line for Pittsburgh at Pinnacle on screen right now, it's minus 123. I made that closer to minus 130. I made the spread closer to 2, just above 2, 2.1, something like that. So this is kind of the opposite I guess depends on where the number first was. It kind of moved in that direction, but I think it's kind of overmoved now. Just no real strong position. I think personally, Rob mentions in the chat, Baltimore teaser leg, probably a decent way to play this one in the sense that Pittsburgh is not blowing teams out. They're winning a lot of close games, whether that's against the Colts, the Falcons, the Saints. And then you have a total of 37 where like the variance in this game is extremely low. That makes those teaser legs or those teaser points through 3, through 7 even more powerful. So, buying Pitt high right now. This is an interesting one because I think Pitt was low for a lot of the year, right? I mean, pull up the Steelers roll really quickly. I'll get it up here in front of me. But I mean, we talked about this a few weeks back. Like the schedule to start the year was Bengals, Patriots, Browns, Jets, Bills, Bucks, Dolphins, Eagles. So they went into their bye week having played a gauntlet of a schedule, and then they come out and they play the Saints, which they win. They lose to the Bengals again. They beat the Colts and Falcons. I think it's been pretty consistent this year where the Steelers play a bad team or a team that's worse than them. They hold up to their end of the bargain. When they play better teams, they just can't compete with them. And Baltimore with Huntley, where do you put them in that equation? I don't know, personally. Ravens defense has gotten a lot better, but would you play Baltimore +3? Yes, I would. Someone asked, what is this line with a healthy Lamar? I'm guessing Baltimore 3.5 or 4 on the road. That would be my guess. It's what I would have made the number last week going into that game. Okay. Would you tease Ravens with Chiefs? You could do Chiefs. You could do Eagles. There's a bunch of options out there right now. Keep going. So still the one play so far, which was the Lions on the money line, which is we're going to get some Sunday morning closing line value, baby, up to 133. I still think this is playable, by the way. I still do. My money line was minus 139, I believe, in the game. Okay. Seems like the Dolphins Chargers is in a weird spot here, rotation number order, but this game got flexed. Sunday Night Football. Internet's lagging, but it should load here really quickly. There we go. Okay. So Miami settled in at 3. So the 3.5's on the board. I mean, there are a few recreational books that still are offering those, which I think is a good number on the Chargers. And the total is what I wanted to talk about. But this was just like smashed up over the course of the week. And you can see why you had the positive injury news for the Chargers offense, which was Corey Linsley back at center, Mike Williams back at receiver. And then you get the horrible injury news for the defense, which is Derwin James is out at safety. Massive, massive loss for that defense. Sebastian Joseph Day, also a loss, but not as much of one. It's challenging to see where the Chargers defensive stops come from, especially with Teron Armstead very likely going to be back at left tackle for Miami in this game. With that said, there has been like a weird anomaly this year, which was pointed out to me by a friend of mine, which I then talked about on the Matchbook podcast earlier this week. But for some reason or another, the Chargers have been a very good defensive team against play action in terms of success rate, 8th best team in the league defending play action. The Dolphins use a ton of it at the NFL's second highest rate, 40% of their dropbacks. However, with that said, all of that is with Derwin James on the field, and with him off the field, I think that's probably going to impact their ability to defend play action plays as well. So I do think that the Dolphins are going to score a lot in this game. It has the makings of a matchup where the Chargers can't generate a ton of pressure defensively. The secondary is not good enough right now to defend Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You'd have to get some positive variance in terms of turnovers, I think, for the Chargers. With that said, the Chargers can score, and they proved time and time again when Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are together on the field. Keenan Allen might be a shell of his former self, but the offensive EPA numbers with them on the field is monumentally different. I think this is kind of settled into the right range. If it was to get back up to 3.5 again, I would very likely bet the Chargers. I think the hook is very valuable in this game, especially with the Chargers' ability to score from behind if they need to. But it's really just one where all the valuable positions, I think, are gone in one way or another. Like Dolphins kind of opened as a pick in this spot. Could have bet them very early in the week, -1, -1.5. Great numbers. Total was in and around 51.5 at one point. And I think just the market has priced in these injuries now and accurately moved it out to where it should be. So the one thing I will say in particular about this game, and this has nothing to do with a gambling tie-in, but you're going to hear, obviously, all the Herbert and Tua comparisons tonight. And I will say one thing about Herbert, which completely goes unnoticed and what people don't realize this year, and why Justin Herbert is an amazing quarterback and why I think he's better than Tua, despite the fact that Tua is going to put up much better numbers this year. But the Chargers have allowed pressure at the 6th highest rate in the entire league, 37.6% of the time that they drop back to pass, they allow a pressure. Justin Herbert has taken a sack on just 13% of the dropbacks where he was pressured. That's the 3rd lowest rate in the entire league. He has been able to make something out of nothing a lot of times. And there aren't very many quarterbacks that can succeed in that type of situation and look good in that type of situation. It'd be a long few days from my friend Jeff Feinberg, who I think I saw in the chat earlier, if the Chargers lose this game tonight. But the coaching mismatch for the Dolphins is a big one. everything is set up for Tua to succeed. And that's not I'm not diminishing his performance in any way. He actually might be just this good. However, he's surrounded with a very intelligent head coach, great weapons, and on the other side, Herbert's kind of got the complete opposite right now. Okay, just some updates on injuries. Trevor Lawrence is active. That was expected. Kenneth Walker out. DK Metcalf active, which is good timing because we're going to get into that here shortly. Before then, though, did I? No, I didn't miss the game. Never mind. I'm just Tampa and San Fran. This will be another one where I'm going to place a bet here. I am going to lock in the San Francisco 49ers plus 3.5 minus 111, which is the best 3.5 price at Pinnacle right now, for $75, 3/4 unit. These are inherently challenging games to break down because you have an incredibly small sample size quarterback, right? In Brock Purdy. And you kind of have to use, I think, a prior for Brock Purdy, which is that he's a 7th round draft pick. Take a step back here, not turn it all into a Brock Purdy thing, but more of a Jimmy Garoppolo thing. I tweeted this last year, got a lot of flack for it. There's people that are just never going to see what I see in Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's totally fine. I think Garoppolo is so perfect for the 49ers offense, where he has an incredibly fast release, gets the ball out to his playmakers, they do the damage. And when you have the likes of Debo and Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and all these guys, even like Kyle Juszczyk, a fullback weapon, that's kind of what you need out of your quarterback. And if we look at the whole of Kyle Shanahan's offenses, when he's had Jimmy G versus when he's had literally anyone else, whether that's Trey Lance, Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, whoever. If you look at Garoppolo starts, 2.35 points per drive. If you look at the other quarterback starts, 1.66 points per drive. That is a very, very large discrepancy. You look at the red zone, 59% touchdown rate in the red zone for Jimmy G. The other quarterbacks, 48%. So you get a drop off in scoring once you get to the red zone as well. It's not all about just moving the ball between the 20s. It's about scoring touchdowns. So I think that this is a larger drop off. And I'm obviously willing to put my money down on it than the market thinks right now. And this is coming from someone who thinks that Tampa Bay is trash. Like, I can't remember the last time I bet Tampa Bay, honestly, this year, if I even have at all. I bet against them a bunch with fairly decent success, including last week against New Orleans. They're still dealing with injuries. Tristan Wirf's out at right tackle. They're missing their starting safeties. Antoine Winfield, Mike Edwards is out as well. The San Fran injury flying under the radar, though, is Nick Bosa. I don't want to say it's flying under the radar, but didn't get as much coverage as I thought it would this week. He's nowhere near 100%. Not a given that he's going to play today, although it does seem likely. But at the end of the day, you need the 49ers to win by margin with a 7th round draft pick at quarterback against a very good defense, against a head coach in Todd Bowles, who has historically fared very well against rookie quarterbacks, and is probably going to blitz Brock Purdy into oblivion today. So I just can't get there. I'm willing to take the points with Tampa, and, they're not a great team, but they're not the ones that have to win this game by 4 to cover the spread. They just have to keep the game close. And I see a ton of scenarios, in which San Fran wins this game by exactly 3 points. See, the porn bots are getting to us here this morning. That's a sign that things are going well. Apologies, guys. You guys know what I meant. I didn't see the chat till just now. Said San Fran +3, Tampa +3. I think that the argument or the case for the game would have indicated that. Definitely has liquor in the cup today. We just got coffee. We got coffee. This hasn't been spiked with anything this morning. Rob going senile. Yes, very possible. All right, guys. Friends don't let other friends bet on Todd Bowles. Man, he's such a great coordinator and such a bad coach. honestly, I don't know if Tampa wins by 30 if Brady just runs hurry up all game, but I would, they could win. Maybe a little sugar. I love the diabetes jokes. I did laugh at that one. Okay, 2 more games. Thanks for everyone sticking it out this morning. Carolina battle. Get that onto our screen here. Okay. For those who watch Forward Progress every week, Sunday nights at 10:30 Eastern time, for one, I appreciate it. But for number 2, I did mention when we recorded last week, 10:30 Eastern on Sunday, that I thought this line would open up pretty high and that Carolina would take a bunch of money. This week, it happened. They got down to 3.5. There was a little bit of buyback on Seattle, and that's where we end right now. I think this is by virtue of the fact that the Seahawks defense has fallen off of a cliff, for one, in recent weeks. You had that spell in like mid-season there where Seattle's defense was playing a whole lot better. And I think we're now performing more at the talent level of what we expected of the Seattle defense earlier on. And then on top of that, I think you have some added optimism on Carolina that it's not Baker Mayfield anymore. It's not PJ Walker. I got PJ Walker right this week and didn't say PJ Tucker. Point of emphasis for me going forwards. You get Sam Darnold and you get a bye week, and that might fix the offense. I don't know that it will. I think the probability of that happening or that him being better than the other options is high. However, I think they're going to have to score in this game because you have Seattle at home, decent offense, Geno Smith performing still really well. DK Metcalf good to go, as was mentioned in the chat. But tough game for me. I'm kind of in and around the between 4 and 4.5 as a fair value type of situation. But I don't want to lay it with Seattle because their defense is quite bad right now. Could easily see them getting backdoored. And Carolina's kind of had an underrated defensive unit for the majority of the season here as well. My friend Suma, part of the Hammer Betting Network, Fabian Sommer, made a good case for the over 44 in this game earlier in the week. I agree with that, but now we're off 44, so there's really not a whole lot to do here. I do think Seattle's going to score. I think the likelihood that Carolina's offense is improved with Darnold is fairly high. Will he be seeing ghosts today? I don't know if he'll be seeing ghosts today. I don't know that what's his name? Clint Hurt, I'm pretty sure, is the defensive coordinator for the Seahawks. Yeah, what is this? Zimmering. Eilt Zimmering. I butchered your name. Sorry about that, buddy. 230 watching, only 58 likes. Hit the like button, people. As my friend Nick Costas would say, don't be a freeloader. Here on the Pizza Buffet presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. This is actually a good notion. Would you fade Purdy by betting Seattle to win the NFC West? So I have personally faded Purdy by betting Tampa Bay to win the NFC, which I don't think is going to happen, by the way. I think there's a lot of scenarios here where San Fran just drops off and Tampa Bay gets into a great, like 2 good playoff matchups where they can get to the NFC finals. I mean, it would suck if that happened because Tampa Bay stinks, but this is another good way to do it, I think. Absolutely. It's probably priced into the market a little bit more now, though, now that we've had a week go by for people to make these types of bets. Not a lot. I mean, hopefully a lot of people get that. They do a good job over there at You Better You Bet. Okay, final game on the board here is going to be Kansas City and Denver. Okay, so got out to like 9.5 and was approaching 10, and you get a little bit of Denver money late in the week. The total's been bet up, which I'm a little bit surprised by. To be this, I mean, I get it. It's Patrick Mahomes. Completely understand it. The Denver Broncos do not score points. Like they don't. They only score points against the Raiders. That's when Denver scores. Denver has played one with Russell Wilson this year. Just pulling up the schedule. With Russell Wilson, they've played one game that has gone over 38 points. A single game. 11 games. That was week 4, 33-22 against the Raiders. The rest of the points in Broncos games this year are 33, 25, 21, 21, 35, 38, 27, 38, 33, and 19. I'm very surprised at the over money. I am. Actually, you know what? I'm so surprised. I'm actually going to bet this under 44.5 for $50. You won't get me to not bet this. I think it's just gone too far at this point. I don't see the path to success for Denver's offense. I really don't. Even if the Chiefs get ahead by a lot, if you look at the Broncos in garbage time this year, their EPA numbers are still just as bad as their non-garbage time numbers. They do not move the ball, plain and simple. So I'll be in on this under here as a last play. Could the Chiefs do this themselves? Sure they can. But, I mean, Broncos defense is largely held up with a bunch of injuries this year. KC is not like really a big play team right now. They're more of a methodical team, move it up the field. They will probably have some offensive success overall, but way too high a total at this point. Cortland Sutton out for Denver. We don't know about their left guard, Dalton Risner. Even more incredible stat here. Broncos are averaging just 2 red zone drives per game. That's the lowest since 2018, where the Arizona Cardinals averaged 1.75. I can't get this high. Surprised it went there. In terms of side, don't really know on this game. You have Kansas City in a role where anyone who's been paying attention to the Chiefs for the last season and a half knows that Kansas City is struggling to win games by margin. They win a lot of games, but they don't blow a lot of teams out anymore, which they did when Mahomes first took over at quarterback there. Denver's live. They don't lose a lot of games by margin because their defense is so good. But then again, they haven't played the quality of Kansas City. So that's going to wrap it up in terms of our card. I'll quickly review where we stand right now. And if anyone wants to drop any questions into the chat, I'll get to as many as I can before I sign off of here as well. But let's do a quick recap. So Cleveland and Cincy, we've seen a little bit since I started, a little bit more money coming back to Cincy. I think this market is entirely fine. Jets and Bills, a little tiny tick towards Buffalo. When I first started, it was -10 plus 102. We're now 5-cent move on the news that Deion Dawkins, Matt Milano are playing. Again, I think that this number is fine. For pool purposes, I would pick the Bills in this game. For Bengals, Browns, whatever your ATS pool is, if it's stale line and you get 5.5, 6, pick the Browns. If not, and you have to pick the closing spread, probably still picking the Browns, to be honest. Texans, Cowboys, no opinion at all whatsoever. For pool purposes, I would take oh my God, I don't even know I'd flip a coin is what I would do, honestly. Minnesota, Detroit, played Detroit on the money line, -123. I make the money line -139. I make the point spread -2.8. So I kind of agree with where we are at now. More money towards Tennessee towards the end of the day here, or the end of the morning here, I should say. Again, I think that this is kind of settled into the right spot. I still lean Jacksonville, if anything, just because I think needing the Titans to win by 4, or if this, I think that's a bad bet, but not much. Eagles, Giants, no opinion here, really. Consider taking some alt spreads on the Eagles. I will go do that right after we get off air here. Ravens, Steelers, small lean Steelers. Dolphins, Chargers, nothing for me to do here at current market. If we do get out to 3.5 again, I'll bet the Chargers. Bucks and 49ers, played the Bucks. Panthers, Seahawks, no opinion. Total drops down to 44. That's an over. And then Chiefs, Broncos, I did just play the half minute. And then looking at where we are, wow, look, closing line value on a Sunday. Who says you can't get closing line value on a Sunday morning pizza buffet? 3 picks, 3 closing line values. Monday Night Football. I'll talk about this more on Forward Progress tonight and give the full handicap. So for those tuning in right now, just subscribe to the channel. Myself, Clive Bixby, will go live at 10:30 Eastern time tonight. We'll recap the whole day. and then we will look ahead to next week and make some predictions. But we'll also preview Monday Night Football. I think the number's a little bit short for the Patriots. Not egregious altogether, but don't love the matchup for Arizona with the amount of players on IR on the offensive line for them. Have you made any downward model adjustment for Tampa's coaching? Everything, I don't know if you purposely misspelled bulls as bowels, but it's pretty funny. And Leftwich say in pressers, yes. Okay. So I don't want to talk about how I do coaching specifically because everybody does things in a different way. Theoretically, a lot of coaching would just be reflected in the like the numbers, that the output of the team. So you don't want to double count for coaching a lot of times, right? Earlier in the year, I'm more inclined to make bigger adjustments. Now we just see that reflected in their numbers, so to speak. So that's kind of the way that I would answer that. A first touchdown dart for the show today. Yeah, okay. I'm going to scan the board really quick. I'm sure this is very entertaining for the viewership still watching of me just scanning through the board. Let's go Brock Wright. Detroit Lions, Brock Wright. First touchdown scorer. I'll pull up a price really quickly on betstamp and we'll find it right now. So you could click into any game here on betstamp, player props, Brock Wright, first TD. Let's go. You can find him 33-1 in market. Brock Wright. That's where we're headed. That's the dart. Keep going here. Any thoughts on Vikes Lions total? No, really, honestly. No thoughts on the total whatsoever. Would you be hanging on to Croatia 5,500 or Morocco plus 10,000 tickets to win the World Cup? Okay, so hedging is a matter of personal preference. If you are going to if Croatia and Morocco lose and you're never going to sleep again and you just cost yourself a life-changing money or whatever, then don't hedge that bet. If, however, you're going to be really upset, then you can make a minus EV bet for peace of mind. This is purely personal preference. I cannot give advice on that altogether. I think that's it. Forward progress tonight on this very channel. Subscribe to the channel. You'll get notified when we go live. If you still haven't clicked the thumbs up button, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm not impressed. So click the thumbs up button. Second thing, subscribe to the Hammer HQ channel as well. 8 o'clock Eastern tonight, we'll go on. We'll preview Sunday Night Football, me and Suma, like we do every single week. It's going to be a banger of a show. We'll find some props for the game. Lots of stuff going on overall. Thank you for tuning in for a longer episode today of the Pizza Buffet, presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I cannot recommend Pinnacle Sportsbook enough to those of you who are in Ontario. I've been betting with Pinnacle for a long time. It is a grade A sportsbook. I'm not saying that because they sponsor the show. They sponsor the show because I wanted to have a sportsbook that is the class of Pinnacle sponsoring the show. Get yourself a Pinnacle account in Ontario. You won't regret it. Low hold. You can't do wrong. Great book. This has been the Pizza Buffet here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel as part of the Hammer Betting Network. Good luck with your bets today. Unless you're opposite to me, then I can't wish you good luck, but hopefully you win the rest of your plays today. And I'll talk to everyone or see everyone again. Hammer HQ, 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Peace.